one. We're not going to do this again. You know what you're getting into. Knock it off. Don't go back. And so he ends up kind of having to even change social groups. Like, their pub was a huge deal. Like, their social group, their gatherings, things like that, the same kind of friends. They end up having to change everything. The guy changes bars because
It's pretty serious.
he changes bars for this woman. He can't even have the same friends because they know better. They're trying to persuade him. So she's mad because he's not letting her move back in. She wants the happy family, and now she's even farther from it. So it gets even worse at this point, because what does she do when she gets mad?
Violence.
She gets even, yeah. So once she ends up, this is like early February, they end up having an argument. This is February of 2000 when this is occurring. So early February, they end up having an argument. She stabs him in the chest. Same exact pattern as so many others. Like, it just keeps escalating. It gets more and more serious, and then it ends. And so now we're going to see what happens with Pricey. So he ends up getting a restraining order because he's worried about his children mostly. I mean, he's worried for his own safety, but the thing that's really worrying him most about this situation is that he has his kids there in that situation. So he tells his coworkers that if he ever goes missing, it was because she'd killed him. So he starts warning, like, everybody is on high alert. His neighbors are on high alert, his bosses, his coworkers. He doesn't have a whole lot of friends to tell, but what friends he does have, he's telling them at this point. He's warning everybody that he can. If something happens to me, it's her. So she's quoted during this time telling one of his family members, I actually think it was one of his daughters, if Pricey takes me back, he takes me back until death. So that ends up actually happening.
Uh-oh.
So on February 29th of 2000, he comes home from work. He does everything like he's normally doing. He checks in with his neighbors. Again, like I said, they're all kind of watching out for him. He ends up going to bed around 11. I looked up a little bit of what their nights usually looked like, because she basically is just coming and going, even though she's not allowed to move in. She came in and at one point was watching TV, took a shower. They ended up being intimate that night, and then at some point while he was in bed, she attacks him. So on the night of February 29th, 2000 to the morning of March 1st is what time frame we're looking at. So on March 1st, his neighbors are still seeing his car outside of his house at 6 a.m. By 8 o'clock, when he's not showing up for work, a coworker is already concerned. They already know that there's something wrong. So the coworker or the neighbor, one of the two, goes to check on him. They see blood on the door and they know that we've got a problem. So they call the police immediately. So the police get there. They find the most horrific scene ever. I can't even imagine this. I've never actually read or heard of anything so bad. So there's something that appears to be like a curtain hanging in front of the door in the living room area. It's actually his skin. It's hanging from a meat hook. So she had a very busy night. So he again was in bed when she attacked him. He was subsequently stabbed 37 times. They couldn't actually count. I mean, that's a pretty rough estimate of 37 times. All of them said 37, all of the sources, but it did mention that it was such a rough attack that it was hard to count the number of wounds on him. She'd hit a lot of vital organs like the lungs, liver, kidneys, and aorta. He had lost a lot of blood. So, again, she's an expert in this kind of stuff. With cattle is different, but she's, again, like, she knows what she's doing with this kind of stuff. And definitely a severe fascination in this kind of stuff, which, again, does not lead to being a murderer, because I'm also. So she places his body in a lounge room. She decapitates him, and obviously he'd been skinned. So they go into the kitchen. There are some plates on the table. It appears that she's plated up two plates here with some steak, potatoes, vegetables, and gravy. On closer investigation of what it is, it's actually meat from Pricey's buttocks. And she has made them into steaks. She's fed some of it to the dogs. She's plated up some of it for his daughters. So the two plates that are on the table are accompanied by some handwritten and very misspelled and horribly spiteful notes for his two daughters. Remember, she can't read or write, and so her spelling and everything is hideous, but she definitely gets her point across, and it's horrible. There was also a report of some pictures of his daughters being stabbed, and so, I mean, even now in the interviews of talking present day with his daughters, or more recently with his daughters, they were not horribly spiteful toward her. And so I don't know what was causing this. If she felt maybe that was the reason that they couldn't be together, I wonder. I don't know. But it's not good. So they find his head sitting in a pot with vegetables on the stove. Yeah. She also, this is, I don't know, after all of that, I don't know why I find this even more disturbing, but she positions what's left of his skinned body on his favorite chair, and she crosses his legs like he normally would sit. And they talked about it, how it's just like basically kind of an upper hand move, which I see throughout her life being a pattern. That she always gets the upper hand. Nobody ever can out-intimidate her. And she's always the one who's going to be scary. She's always going to be getting her point across. And it's disturbing, I guess, because of the whole psychology behind it that they talked about. So she senses, obviously, that she's going to be in a lot of trouble, and she takes a handful of pills. She passes out near this gruesome scene. So they gather her up and they go question her, and the questioning is so bizarre because there's just no emotion. She first has no recollection of it. She doesn't remember a thing. It all just basically happened. She didn't even know what happened. Yeah, I don't know much about it. So she eventually does change her story. Now she's trying to tell the police that it's his fault. She just basically was cooking dinner. He came at her. It could have been a fork. It could have been a spoon. Unfortunately, it was a knife. He came at her. She accidentally stabbed him. She wasn't seeing him clearly. Her eyes aren't great, and so she couldn't see him clearly. Tons of excuses. She never again owns up for anything and never sees herself in any of this. There's no accountability. And now she tries to blame him. So at the beginning of the trial, she enters into a not guilty plea, which she surprisingly changes just all of a sudden into a guilty plea. The judge for her court had actually been very worried when she changed her plea that she was going to enter into a guilty plea and then something would happen that she would be able to get it overturned because of an insanity plea. So he orders that she go and see some psychiatrist in order to prevent that from happening. So he makes her go see these people. She was diagnosed by 3 different psychiatrists with a borderline personality disorder. They determined that she's completely and totally sane, which I don't know. Yeah. I'm no psychiatrist, but this woman is, I don't know. There's some things happening, it feels like. But a borderline personality disorder is definitely different than a mental illness. It's definitely would not cause something like this. A person can be a narcissist, they can have a borderline personality disorder, and they do not commit these heinous crimes. But definitely in her case, if she was not getting her way, or imagined that you had done something to her, you didn't even have to have done it, but if she imagined that you were doing something wrong, she's going to get revenge on you. So during the trial, the judge states that she never looks directly at any witnesses, she never shows emotion, never any reaction to photos, videos that are being played, nothing. And so one point, she ends up having this horrible episode. She's rocking violently, she falls down in this emotional display, and she's just, some reports said they actually had to sedate her during this, and they talked about how this was just completely fake. Yeah, it was not a real display of an emotion of any kind. But I don't know. Of course, we can't ever really know, but it didn't seem like it was probably authentic. So she ends up being sentenced. She's the first Australian woman to ever be sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. She is actually still serving her sentence. She's now 65 years old, and the other inmates call her grandma. And here's a picture of my gal Catherine. And this is her young. This is her as life went on. And
what you'd expect.
Not at all. Not at all. She looks. This is her first David. So, I mean, she doesn't look. That's pricey. She doesn't look like a scary lady. I mean, she looks like a grandma now. I mean, a little defenseless grandma. But, oh, what's behind that cell door? So, like I said, I did want to mention a few things about domestic violence just because it does affect so many people. Women, men, young people, it doesn't matter what age or what race, what group you're in, you might be dealing with this. So domestic violence can be calling names, it can be insults. A lot of times they will prevent you from doing activities, being around friends, family members. They like to control things. So we definitely see that as a pattern with her. Controlling financial matters, health matters, anything like that. They like to have the upper hand, which is also preventing you from activities. They definitely have the control and the upper hand in that. Jealousy, possessive behavior, accusing you of being unfaithful, accusing you of doing things, a lot of gaslighting always. Can be worse with alcohol or drugs, definitely gets worse in those scenarios. Hurting you, family members, or pets, huge indicator of get the hell out, right? Sexual intimidation or abuse, threatens with violence or weapons, and often blames you for their behavior. So in all of these things, we definitely see Catherine in all of those things. And luckily, the first ones were able to get out safely, but unfortunately, Pricey was not able to get out with his life. So hopefully this will be a good message for anyone who is dealing with domestic violence or might know of somebody who is. If you or someone you know is dealing with domestic violence, please call 1-800-799-SAFE. That's just one resource that's out there. Please reach out if you're in one of those situations. Please reach out before it's too late. So, anything else from you? Any thoughts? Or
I don't think so.
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
A hard story. It's a rough one.
Yes.
So I did want to read one other review that we've received. This review was back on February 23rd, and Dr. Mexico 05. Thank you, Dr. Mexico 05, for your review. it says, love it. So great. Keep them coming. And thank you.